F1 is all about seizing opportunities. On track, overtaking as soon as there's a chance.
Fantastic move, that was stunning!
Or making a pit stop at the perfect moment.
And box to overtake.
Can change a driver's race. Off track, taking opportunities can transform a driver's life. And in the days after his unexpected, unbelievable F1 race debut, Nyck De Vries knew he had that opportunity.
The phone just kept going, and I really wanted to use the momentum and the buzz that was happening to conquer and create an opportunity for me in Formula One.
Phone calls led to flights, meetings, and finally, a deal. Nyck wasn't going to let this chance slip away, and this is how he seized it. Hi, I'm Tom Clarkson, and I'm really excited to be bringing you this episode of F1 Beyond the Grid. It's the first in-depth interview with Nyck De Vries since he found out he'd be driving for AlphaTauri in 2023, a chance to reflect on how it all happened. He's shown his speed by winning the Formula 2 and Formula E championships and in F1 practice sessions. But his greatest chance of all came suddenly at the 2022 Italian Grand Prix.
Nyck De Vries is going to make his Grand Prix debut this weekend. Of course, we wish Alex Albon a swift recovery. He has appendicitis and will not be taking part in the remainder of the weekend. Nyck thrown in. We'll see how he performs under pressure.
Nyck De Vries is going to score for Williams in 9th position. Well done to Nyck De Vries.
Wow. Points on debut.
It was an amazing debut drive, the kind that catches the eye of F1 teams looking to put a new star in their car for a full season. The race was over, but Nyck wanted more, and he knew his chance would be lost if he didn't keep pushing. It's what he did next, off the track, that changed his life. It's awesome to hear him tell that story, and we recorded this at the Japanese Grand Prix just after Nyck had been announced as an AlphaTauri driver for next year. As you'll hear, he's still taking it all in. Listen out for the moment towards the end of the interview when we have to move so a very important person can use our interview room. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Nyck, many thanks for your time. It's great to have you on the show. You being the latest full-time Formula One driver on the grid, just how good does that sound?
It sounds absolutely amazing, and something I've been dreaming of my whole life, working towards a very long time, and it's been a long and tough journey, and to kind of get the opportunity to fulfill that childhood dream, it's just great.
The fact that you've had to fight so hard, and you're 27 now, let's not forget, that's 10 years older than Max Verstappen was when he came in. But does it make it all the sweeter, the fact that you've had to fight so hard?
I think everyone walks their own path. So regardless of my age or how I got here, I think is almost irrelevant. It's very relevant for me personally, but for getting the opportunity is irrelevant, because I think getting the opportunity, when the time is right, is all that matters in the end. For me personally, it's obviously been a roller coaster of a journey, and it does feel even kind of better to now get the chance after, at times I probably would have thought it would have been less likely to ever fulfill my dream, but at the same time, I never really gave up on it.
What's been the reaction around the world? I couldn't help but look at the Dutch newspapers the day after the announcement, front page.
Yeah, everyone's support has been overwhelming. I mean, outside the paddock, publicly, but also very much in the paddock, from other drivers. It's been a pleasure to receive so much positive support, but at the same time, I try also to remain grounded, and I try to seize this moment and enjoy it, be grateful for it, but soon also the future and a new challenge will start.
Can you tell us a little bit about the negotiations and when everything started? Because I believe it all happened very quickly.
Well, to me, it almost feels like a 12-month marathon, because after winning Formula E last season, obviously there were strong conversations with Williams to potentially take George's seat because he was going to Mercedes. That didn't happen. And then naturally, the kind of conversation for 23 almost started, instantly. And that doesn't happen on a daily basis very actively. But, still it's in the air. I was a reserve driver for Mercedes, already last season, as well as for Williams. So that contact has always remained, and the relationship was growing between myself, Williams, and Jost and the team. So I felt like it was a very lengthy process. And at the same time, I also needed to secure a career outside Formula One because, I can't build my future on hope. I need to be realistic about it. But at the same time, I didn't want to give up on my dream and goal. And juggling with those balls felt very intense and at times exhausting, but we never really gave up. And when it really kind of started was obviously when the kind of Oscar conversations and scene was starting publicly. And then when Fernando decided to pursue a different direction and commit to Aston, then obviously that, brought a whole different momentum to the silly season. And then eventually Monza happened out of, nowhere almost. Alex's misfortune obviously became my fortune. Felt very sorry for him, and it in a way it feels strange to kind of capitalize on someone else's misfortune. But yeah, that's how it kind of went.
Can we talk about that Monza weekend then? You start in the Aston Martin in FP1, do a great job. Everyone at the team has told me that. When did you know that you were going to be racing for Williams that weekend?
Yeah, I was really relaxed on the Friday evening. I went down to Mercedes, meet my friends there, and I stayed till probably 11:15 at the track, talking with them how their Friday went, and just social chat. And I was happy to stick around. I generally like to stay at the track in the evening. Yeah, I went to bed at midnight, which is way past my bedtime. And then obviously I wasn't really able to oversee what was going to happen in the future. And on Saturday morning, I was in the pedal club, drinking a cappuccino, was quiet. And then suddenly James Vowles called that I had to come down to the Mercedes engineering truck because there was a chance I would be racing. And I just couldn't believe it. 10 minutes early, we had conversations about the future, like, what is happening. And then suddenly he called back and said, "You're driving." And I just couldn't comprehend with the situation. And everyone was quite happy for me. But I was like, guys, let's, hold on a second. And then I went down to Williams. And obviously it became very quickly clear during the FP3 briefing that I was going to race that weekend. And literally this was happening 1.5 hours before FP3.
It's an amazing story. And you did drive for them in FP1 back in Spain. So, this might seem a silly question, but overalls, helmet, was that already at Williams just in case?
Yes, that was ready. Obviously,
and your seat as well, I suppose. So
correct, yeah. I'm obviously also a reserve at Williams, so everything was prepared in terms of seat, kit, helmet, etc. However, it was a while ago. I had driven their car and their simulator, and I was actually running Alex's wheel in Spain, but I chose to run Nicholas's steering wheel in Monza because that one was a little bit closer towards me. Still too far, but closer. But some of the switches and everything was different, and it's hard to stay on top of everything when you're driving so many different cars. How I usually approach it when the moment is about to happen or when it's coming, I do my homework and then I'm prepared. But this obviously came unprepared. But the team was great. They were very welcoming, and we kind of just focused on the essentials and what I really needed to know to get going.
And what was your goal for that weekend? Because actually, there isn't a better weekend to have been driving the Williams. I think poor Alex, I remember him saying to me at the previous event at Zandvoort, "I'm really looking forward to Monza. The car's going to be really quick there. It's our big opportunity of the year." So it was slippery in a straight line. So, did you think going in that points might have been in the offing?
Well, I think what was playing in my advantage was that I had no time to think. I was so kind of relaxed on Saturday morning, like had a good sleep, came into the track, not expecting what was going to happen. And then suddenly I got thrown into it. And I just remember when I got the call, I messaged my family and girlfriend saying, "I'm driving." And I didn't see my phone since. I got stuck in the engineering office and the garage, and I haven't seen any other people or I couldn't have any distractions because it was just that. And obviously I was very fortunate that the package was strong at Monza, and there were some grid penalties, there were some retirements. Without the safety car, we would have not even finished because we had brake issues prior to the safety car. So all the stars were aligned, and I'm grateful for that.
Was it helpful that you'd driven the Aston Martin in FP1, so you were sort of up to speed with the track, or does that only sort of confuse matters, being in a different car?
I guess it helped to kind of had some track time in the same weekend on that track. The car was very different, and with Aston I obviously had a bit of a different program, but yeah, I think it did help to be a little bit better prepared for what was coming.
Now, you actually qualified 13th. How good was the lap?
Yeah, I think generally I wasn't fully satisfied with qualifying. I felt like there were too many little small mistakes here and there. That's me being critical. Of course, I only had 35 minutes in FP3 to get ready, but in the race it was almost easier to manage that, because in qualifying you've got one lap, and one small mistake means the end of the lap. My Q1 lap 2 was very competitive. That time would have been like on the edge of going through to Q3, but that was deleted. Luckily, my second best lap time was just enough to move into Q2. And then in Q2, my second lap, sector 1 was great, but in the first chicane, I hit something on the steering wheel which moved the brake balance 1.5% rearwards. Accidentally. It was not intended, and clearly my mistake, because it wasn't really on purpose. And then arriving into turn 4, I obviously locked up the rears massively, and that's how I lost the lap. So let's say it was a little clumsy. I had a lap time deleted, which was a great lap, and I touched something on the wheel, which put the brake balance rearward. So it wasn't perfect, but at the same time, it was also decent.
Definitely decent.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with all the grid penalties, you line up P8 on the grid alongside Max Verstappen. It was the Dutch line of the grid. I mean, how welcoming was Max? What was that like?
That was unique. We've known each other since we were kids. We've grown up in the same era of racing. We, I think, approached karting and racing in our earlier years very similar. We both traveled around in a van with our dads. Yeah, we just really respected each other, and we always, we saw each other every weekend pretty much. But strangely, because Max is obviously 2 years younger than me, we never raced against each other. So Monza was actually the first time in our lives we raced against each other, and ironically, we even end up next to each other on the grid. And we were texting about it the evening prior to the race, so on Saturday evening, and we were texting again on Sunday morning. And on the grid, he came to see me, and he kind of, as an older brother does, he came to me and just, encouraged me a little bit, which was very kind. He's been very supportive.
What about the other drivers? I definitely sensed in Monza that there was an outpouring of goodwill towards you. Everyone very happy that you were getting the break. The Mercedes guys, George and Lewis.
Yeah, George and Lewis were... Lewis actually sent me a message on Saturday night as well, which was super kind. And both Lewis and George congratulated me after the race and hugged me and everything. So receiving their support meant the world to me. And it was very overwhelming to receive the support, not from the outside, but very much from the inside. They know what it takes, they know what it is, and to feel, that goodwilling was good.
Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Have you ever noticed that the more you focus on any problems or challenges you might be facing in life, the harder they feel to overcome? If you've taken a series of knocks, it can be difficult to get your brain into problem-solving mode. You can become stuck focusing on the negatives of the situation instead of the solutions that might help you resolve them. I'm a big believer that a problem shared is a problem halved. Talking about the things that are causing you stress is a great way to start to address them and start to look for a solution. And that's where therapy can be a big help. No matter how big or small your problems are, having someone there to listen without judgment can help you understand the emotions you're experiencing, gain perspective, and find the confidence to step out of your comfort zone so you can become the best version of yourself. And if you're thinking about giving therapy a try but don't know where to start, BetterHelp is a great option. It exists entirely online, meaning it's convenient, accessible, and more affordable than in-person therapy. All you need to do is visit the website, complete a brief survey, and you'll be matched with a therapist who can help. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/grid today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/grid.
Nyck De Vries is going to score for Williams in 9th position.
Cracking job from De Vries.
Let's listen in to the radio with Nyck De Vries.
Wow, wow. Points on debut.
Great job, Nick. Fantastic. You're so much deserving.
Thank you, Jost. Thank you. Much appreciated. My shoulders are dead. I can literally not even lift my arms anymore.
Now, what about the race? Much longer races than, recently in Formula E. I want to come on to Le Mans this year, actually. Of course, that's a long race. But I remember seeing you afterwards. You look pretty spent physically.
I was, and I will not deny that. I think currently I'm not fit enough. I mean, I did complete the race and I didn't make mistakes, but I'm not as fit as, the drivers on the grid. They've already completed 18 races and they are really race fit. And frankly speaking, in the past 12 months, I had different priorities. I was juggling not with 3 balls, but with 6 balls. And it was not a matter of being fit, but actually, getting the opportunity. And that's a difficult balance, because sometimes I would spend days behind my laptop and the phone, and then I kind of knew I was missing a gym session. But it's the kind of trade-off you make. Well, you can be as fit as you like, but if you're not racing, then the fitness isn't bringing you anywhere. But historically, I've always been in F2. I was always, very fit. I never struggled, and I really enjoy training, and I think I'm committed to the job. So it was just a different priority, but I was clearly exhausted.
You mentioned sort of being behind the laptop doing lots of work, because I think you're unique on the grid in not having a manager. Well, you and your dad. Am I right in saying that?
Well, I've been a bit more outspoken about my family, because I feel this is very much our kind of accomplishment, because they've been in the background my whole life. And I am kind of the one, dealing with everything at the end. So,
do you do your own negotiations?
Yes. People look at that and they might be opinionated about it. But don't forget, I have a lot of people that I trust that are on the background and I talk with. I'm not alone on the ship, if that makes sense.
Nick, I'm interested that you choose to do it that way. I mean, Gerhard Berger never had a manager, and I asked him why on this show. And he said because he didn't want to give 20% of his salary to someone else. That was his motivation. Just why do you choose to do it yourself when I'm sure there's a million managers out there who would want someone like you on their books?
Well, it was not necessarily a decision that I deliberately want to be dealing with everything myself, but I kind of got into that situation. And I think, the past 12 months, I was also in a quite complicated situation, managing opportunities outside Formula One and inside Formula One. And frankly speaking, I think the necessity of a manager outside Formula One, I think, is less important than inside Formula One. But obviously, working with a manager, not knowing whether you're gonna be there, it was a bit of an awkward situation. I think the way I've managed everything also brought me here today with who I am. But I will look for help around my career in the very short term, because I want to offload myself with some work and want to focus on my performance on track, because ultimately that's all that matters.
Do you feel you understand the business inside out because of all of the negotiating and other stuff other than driving you've had to do?
A lot about this world and in general is about personal relationships. And I think that the advantage of, being or looking after your own career, even though I had a lot of advice on the background, is to build up the personal relationships. And if you always put someone in front that deals with everything for you, people actually don't get to know you. And you never get the chance to show yourself. And apart from the fact that I think it's my character and I enjoy building up personal relationships in any environment, I think that is an advantage of looking after your own interests.
So let's talk now about what happened after Monza. You do that tremendous race, you finish P9. The whole Formula One paddock is buzzing with the name Nyck De Vries. I'm assuming that Jos Capito was on the phone immediately saying, now, 2023, just what happened? How much can you tell us?
Yeah, it was very overwhelming. At the same time, I think my experience and maturity helped me kind of remain very grounded, because it was a great experience, and I'm very grateful for everything that happened that weekend, because I want to acknowledge that we had the necessary luck and support during and post weekend. My dad happened to be there coincidentally, because he was in Monaco in my apartment, and when he found out I was racing, he drove down to Monza. By the way, we are very emotional. We don't talk about it, but we are very emotional. So on Sunday morning, I got into the track. He was already there at the kind of Heineken lounge. I gave him a hug, and we couldn't even exchange a word, because I could feel we were both about to cry. And on the grid, he was there with me, standing in front of my car. And afterwards, I saw his interview with Dutch television, and he literally couldn't say a word. He was just crying. So on Sunday evening, we drove back to Monaco, and on Monday morning, we woke up together. We went to the beach, because I live opposite of the beach, and we just put a towel on the sand and went into the water and stared in front of us and enjoyed the moment. But the phone just kept going, and we're from the north of the Netherlands, and people see us as farmers, but we're also very grounded. And I really wanted to use the momentum and the buzz that was happening to conquer and create an opportunity for me in Formula One in 23. So quite quickly we went back to reality.
What was the first move? Who made the first move? Was it Dr. Marco?
So we were obviously in close conversations with Williams for a longer time, and I spoke to Jos on the Tuesday after the weekend. The Alpine test was always already scheduled. It was scheduled way before Monza. Actually, I went to the Alpine facilities just ahead of Spa. But then I had dinner with Max on Monday evening in Monaco to kind of celebrate and just have dinner together. And we talked about it openly, and about the possibilities and opportunities. And then we talked about potentially, AlphaTauri, Dr. Marco. And that's how it went. And later that week, I was obviously seen in Graz, and I spent 2 days in Austria.
How did you find Dr. Marco? Because he's a hard taskmaster.
We had a great time together. We spent 2 days eating Austrian local food, talking about the future together. He has a good sense of humor, and we respected each other. And I think he appreciated me, for being there, representing myself, and having the conversations with him directly. And Red Bull is all about performance and winning. And I share that. So it was very straightforward and enjoyable.
And you knew in those 2 days where your future was going to be?
Well, obviously it was not entirely in our hands. The deal was a bit more complicated, as everyone understands. But basically that trip made me understand that, there was a very good chance that I could be on the grid in 23.
If the musical chairs ended with Pierre Gasly leaving, you were going to be in.
In that seat, correct. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, what about Red Bull? Because, you were a karting world champion. You won Formula Renault champion, Formula 2 champion, I find it hard to believe that Red Bull didn't try and put you on their young driver program years ago.
I obviously signed with McLaren at a very young age. We just talked about it before walking up here, and the first time I met McLaren was in 2009 in Monza, and actually someone introduced me to Dr. Marco as well, but I don't think he will recall that moment because it was very briefly. But we ended up signing for McLaren at the end of that year, and then I was always a McLaren kind of young driver for pretty much the majority of my career. And after that, when we won Formula 2 and I started building up a relationship at Mercedes, I think in the public eye I was also always very much perceived as a Mercedes driver, although our relationship was formally limited to Formula E contract and a reserve driver contract. Now obviously we were building up a friendly relationship up together with everyone in the team, but I think I was always seen as a Mercedes driver, and I think that Monday evening after Monza made me understand that could have its limitations. So it was important to clarify my situation to the people that make the calls.
And how excited are you to be racing so many of the guys that you raced in the junior formulas?
Somehow it doesn't. That's why somehow it doesn't feel like such a different environment. I've been walking around the paddock for the past 2 years as a reserve driver. I've probably grown up with almost 75% of the current drivers on the grid, and we all know each other and respect each other. So it just feels right.
For those of you that haven't been lucky enough to travel to Austin for the Grand Prix this weekend, don't dismay. Plan your next adventure and explore the opportunity of a memorable vacation at sea with MSC Cruises. Whether you're ready for a quick weekend escape or are longing for a week-long cruise, set sail from Miami, the Orlando area or New York City and look forward to a world of new discoveries. With MSC Cruises, you can choose from 3, 4 or 7-night cruises from Miami or the Orlando area and bask in the crystal clear waters of the Caribbean, explore the vibrant culture of Mexico, and immerse in the natural wonders of the Bahamas, including Ocean Cay, MSC Cruises' private island marine reserve. You can even be among the first to experience the brand new MSC Seascape, which features cutting-edge design, impressive outdoor spaces, and the very first robo-coaster thrill ride at sea. Or set sail from New York City and visit the scenic coastal towns of Canada and New England, relax on the pink sand beaches of Bermuda, or head to the best sights and attractions of the Bahamas and Florida. And that's not all. From the Caribbean to Europe and beyond, all MSC Cruises ships offer world-class entertainment, a selection of pools, sports complexes, the kids' clubs, luxurious spas, an array of dining for all tastes, exciting shore excursions, and a wide choice of global destinations to discover. So get off to a flying start and book your unforgettable cruise vacation at msccruises.com. That's msccruises.com. MSC Cruises, a world of discovery. Can I ask you about some of the other stuff you've been getting up to recently, in 2022 to begin with, because you're in this unique position of having driven lots of different cars. The Williams, obviously, in FP1 in Spain and Monza, of course. The Aston Martin at Monza. The Mercedes at the French Grand Prix, and again in a couple of weeks' time in Mexico. The Alpine 2021 car. Just how do you get your head around all these different cars?
Well, in principle, they're all very similar. And this will, I don't want to make it sound too simple, but ultimately it's a racing car. It has, 4 wheels, a steering wheel, and the principles and basics of racing are the same in every discipline, not only between different Formula 1 cars, but as well as in sports cars, in Formula E, and across any championship. Obviously, everything around it is a little bit different, and in Formula 1, the tools in the car, the operations of a steering wheel are quite different. But as I said, the way I approached it was simply kind of, how you would prepare for an exam. You postpone it, and then the day prior you start studying. Well, that's pretty much has been my approach towards those outings, because you can't expect from yourself that you know those steering wheels inside out for 365 days a year while you're driving 5 days in the whole year. It's just not possible. Plus, you need to put your focus and emphasis in many other areas as well. But it's been a great experience to not only drive the cars, but to really get an inside look of how teams operate, because there is probably an as much of a difference in the car behavior as how people operate as a team.
Difference in car behavior, but up until that last half second, are we actually saying that all Formula 1 cars are very similar up until that last tiny bit?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, I think the characteristics are all very different, and they all have different philosophies to achieve almost the same, but obviously different. And if you look at, for example, this year at the 3 top teams, how different they are in pure performance, not having even spoken about everything, that happens in the background and how they, work towards that performance. So I think the differences are quite significant and bigger than you would probably appreciate when you're watching the time screens.
So taking the car to the limit is different.
Well, the feeling you get from the car to take the car to the limit. Like, all the cars have different characteristics, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, they are seconds apart, but the feeling you get from it is just different when you drive it on the limit, if you like.
Have you ever driven the perfect Formula One car?
I think a perfect car doesn't exist. Nothing is ever perfect. There are always compromises to make. You know, on a track you have various corners, low, medium, high-speed corners. You have the tire thermal effect that plays a role. If you simply take Barcelona as an example, you'll often start the lap with a bit more understeer than you finish the lap when you build up the tire temperatures through the last sector. So it's never perfect, and that's why you use the tools in the car to preempt what's coming. You might, you know, open the diff a little bit in the first part of the track and close it more towards the end, or you use, you know, the brake settings to influence that. So it's always a moving target.
Now, look, talking of moving targets, I want to ask you about Le Mans now, because you were there in June as Toyota's reserve driver, yet you ended up racing an LMP2, a last-minute call-up. Just can you tell us about that weekend? And I've spoken to Anthony Davidson about it, and he just said you did the most amazing job in the car. I think you set fastest lap, fastest stint, I think, as well in the race. But there's a good story here.
Yeah, I was in Le Mans. I was basically, when I joined Mercedes as a Formula E driver, kind of end of 2019, I quite shortly joined Toyota in the beginning of 2020 as their test and reserve driver. So I've been, you know, part of their team for quite some time now. And I was present at Le Mans to be their reserve, prepared for anything. And I remember I think it was on the Friday evening, it was probably 2 a.m. I received a call from Xavier Combat, if I'm pronouncing his surname correct, basically TDS. TDS also runs racing team the Netherlands, Jumbo. So I was familiar with the team, but he called me and he asked whether I was, you know, ready and available to jump in the car. And obviously I was very keen. Obviously had to discuss it with Toyota, but they were very supportive and cooperative. So I spent the Saturday, you know, making a seat and getting up to speed with everything again. I did 0 laps, 0. I mean, mind you, normally in Le Mans you have to do time in the night to qualify for the race, etc., etc. Sadly, the car had lost. The reason why I was driving was because that gentleman driver had a tough time and had been involved in some incidents, and therefore was kind of suspended from the event. And the person that qualified went so many times outside of track limits that we started last. Well, LMP2 was a huge grid. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there must have been 30 cars or something. So Sunday morning, I jump in for the warm-up, and yeah, it went well. I was quickly on the pace, and we started the race, obviously coming from last. And, you know, in LMP2, you're very much, the lineup is very important to fight and be competitive for a good result, because you have the ranking, so you have platinum, gold, silver, and bronze drivers. And as our bronze left and I joined, we suddenly moved from the Pro-M category in LMP2 to the kind of, well, pro class, if you like. And the race went great, the team was great, and yeah, we came from last to fourth, and I was fortunate enough to have the quickest averages, and yeah, that actually happened twice. The past 2 Le Mans, I had the quickest averages, but I've been lucky, you know, because I'm so light, and that's clearly playing in my advantage. So I really love everything about that race. And one day, but hopefully I can postpone it a long time forward, I can come back to Le Mans to actually fight for a win.
Nyck, you're being very modest. Your composure, I can see, must help you in these weird situations that you find yourself in when you're just parachuted in at the last minute. How do you find the whole sharing a car with other drivers? Because, you know, you are a single-seater beast at heart, aren't you?
Yeah, you asked earlier, you know, what was the perfect Formula One car you had driven? And I think from that regard, I learned a lot in endurance racing. During my time in Formula 2, when I decided to combine that with WEC, to join Racing Team the Netherlands, because I think through my junior single-seater category, I was often too rigid, and I was always striving for too much perfection, and that kind of limited my freedom to sometimes, let my intuition and talent do my job. Actually, when I joined Racing Team the Netherlands, and there was a lot of fun and compromises to be done in anything or in everything, I learned that, sometimes you just have to get on with it. I think that part of endurance racing was very valuable, because sometimes in single-seater racing, when you already with your seat, you make two different seats, you're never happy. And in endurance racing, I was sharing the car with Fritz Van Aert and Guido van der Garde, who were much taller than me, and nothing was ever perfect, but you still got to do your job, and you still got to jump in. And if the belts aren't, fully comfortable, you just have to get on with it. And that opened my limitations is maybe a harsh word, but I was just always so much focused on every detail that it helped me learn to focus on the bigger picture. That was probably the most important thing I've learned from endurance racing, and actually, in hindsight, loved most about it, that it's a real team effort, and you're looking for the best compromise together, and ultimately, winning is more fun together than alone.
Do you want to beat your teammates in endurance racing? Are you very competitive with the guys in the same car, or are you looking at the bigger picture?
Bigger picture. Ultimately, it's a team effort, and if you get asked to jump in again because that is in the team's interest, because you appear to be quick, then I'll be jumping in. But if I had a tough day, I would be the first one to push my teammate ahead, because it's a team effort and a team performance. So yeah, definitely team's interest in that regard.
Some of you out there are probably heading into the cooler months at this time in the year, while others are still enjoying the sun. But for me, it doesn't matter what season it is, I always ensure I keep well hydrated to keep me feeling great all year round. That's why my Liquid IV sachets are the first thing I'll be packing before I head to Austin for the Grand Prix this weekend. Liquid IV fuels your well-being with easy ways to stay hydrated at home and on the go. Just one stick of Liquid IV dissolved in water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12 and vitamin C, and has 3 times the electrolytes of a traditional sports drink. And not only that, it comes in a variety of flavours like tropical punch, passion fruit, strawberry and lemon lime. My main go-to is the watermelon flavour, and I love how it comes in small individual sachets, so I can make sure I always have some with me when travelling, working, or if I just need a boost when exercising. No matter what the day throws at me, Liquid IV is the most convenient way for me to stay hydrated and feeling at my best. And it can do the same for you. Grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or get 15% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code GRID at checkout. That's 15% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code GRID at liquidiv.com. Nick, let's throw it forward then to next year. What are the goals?
I've had that question twice today, and I wasn't really prepared for it, because everything has happened so quickly and it's just been announced, and I'm seizing the moment and obviously looking forward to what is coming. But AlphaTauri is a sister team from Red Bull. They share a lot of knowledge and resources. So I think the package and the team has a lot of potential if we use those resources in our benefit. And the team is based in Italy. I've spent a lot of time in Italy during my karting time, so it just feels like a very welcoming and nice environment. So I really believe we can do great things together, but it will require a good winter preparation together to get on top of things, and then we'll give everything we have to achieve the best we can.
Can you speak Italian?
Yes.
How many languages can you speak?
4. My Italian is decent.
Is your Italian as good as your English?
No. No. But my Italian is decent. French, below average. And then obviously Dutch and English. I can actually write Italian as well. but I wouldn't be able to do that in French.
But I think this will really help just ingratiate yourself with the team.
I hope so, and I believe it will. And the Italians have that kind of warm family approach and feeling towards that, and I enjoy that, and I think that will encourage and also make me feel at home.
Nyck, the Italians do. I'm not totally convinced that Franz Tost does. I always think of Franz as quite a hard man with his drivers. Is that fair? Am I being fair?
I think it's rightly so to some extent. It's a very competitive world, and it's all about performance. And ultimately, we're all here with the same objective, and that is to win. And everyone has different personalities and characters, and everyone is different. And I think it's important to appreciate every individual, how they are. And everyone will have strength and weaknesses. And it's up to me to kind of identify them and put the best together and extract the best from everyone in the team. But I think everyone deserves to have their own way of doing things, and hopefully it will lead to the same goal, because ultimately that's what we're here for.
How well do you know Yuki Tsunoda, your future teammate?
When he was in Formula 2, I was one of his biggest supporters. He's obviously an entertaining young guy, and he is not afraid to speak his opinion. So I enjoy watching him. He's very talented and very, very quick. So I'm sure we'll have a great time together, and I look forward to be joining him. It will be the first time in my career I'll have a smaller teammate than me. But we just figured we still have the same shoe size. So
Did you catch up with him in Suzuka?
Yeah, we just did actually. Yeah. We did some bonding already. I think 2 years ago we traveled together with Max once from Austria. They had a marketing event near the track at the Red Bull Ring, and I was there for an ELMS race, imagine. And we were traveling back together to Monaco ahead of the Grand Prix, and we did some bonding together.
He's a very keen chef. Are you a chef? Do you like cooking?
Well, I like to think that I am able to look well after myself, so I do cook, yes.
Now look, what about the 24 race calendar? It's the longest in Formula One history next year. Do you see that as an advantage or a disadvantage? Would you have preferred a bigger gap between the races to give you more time to reflect and maybe improve if that's what you need?
I don't see it as an advantage or disadvantage. It's great that we have so much interest from, so many different countries around the world, and it's also exciting to be racing, in so many different places. In all honesty, in terms of weekends away and intensity, I don't think it will be that much different, because I've been doing probably similar amount of weekends in the past years. I do appreciate it's challenging, not only logistics but team personnel and everyone involved with it very much, because I'm young and I don't have a family, but I imagine people at home, have a work private life balance to manage. But at the same time, I don't see, at least from my personal perspective, a lot of issues. It's the same for everyone, and I just love racing, so I just look forward to it.
I'm just imagining what Zandvoort is going to be like. I mean, it's mental anyway, but with 2 Dutch drivers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Max deserves all the support in the world, especially from our country. He has been amazing. He won a championship, and I think he will win a lot more in the near future. But hopefully there will be some Orange fans rooting and cheering for me too.
I'm sure there will. Now, are there any particular tracks you're really looking forward to driving on in a Formula One car? I mean, you've always been really good at street tracks. You have a great record in the junior formulas in Monaco, for example.
Yes, but I look probably most forward to tracks I haven't driven yet, which are quite a lot. I think there must be probably 10 on the calendar. I don't know yet. This one being one of them in Suzuka. And actually being here this weekend, probably I'm already looking forward to come back here next year. Not only because the track is so amazing, but also because the Japanese fans are just so kind and respectful. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think everyone shares that. And we haven't been here for quite a little while, and to see their enthusiasm again. And you leave your hotel in the morning and evening, and they are there all the time. And their respect is just phenomenal.
And your teammate is going to be the focus of it next year as well, isn't it? Your passion comes through so strongly, Nyck. And I just wanted to ask, why motor racing for you? Where did your passion for the sport come from?
Well, before kind of going back, just in the present or recent past, you know, in any other sport, you practice your sport every day. Football, tennis, basketball, golf, anything, you name it. You practice your sport every day. In racing, we don't. We race, we are talking about 24 races, and that's pretty much all we get to do in terms of racing and driving the cars physically. Obviously, we spend a lot of time in the simulators, but that ultimately never comes close to the kind of real sensations we get in the car. So I've always been a very big supporter and in favor of racing and driving as much as I can. And I think that helped me kind of becoming a more all-round driver. Where the passion came from, well, clearly my family and father. He used to sell cars. He had car dealerships. He raced a little bit himself. He actually had a small team to fund his own racing. So he raced Formula Renault, Renault 5 Turbo, and Renault Spider. And at the
Hang on. Was Dad quick?
Well, I think he won the 5 Turbo Benelux Championship, if I'm not mistaken.
Very quick.
Well, very quick. I think he was very conservative. Whenever I'm in with him in a car, I feel like he didn't like high-speed corners. But that's where the passion comes from. He obviously wanted to share his passion with me from a very young age, but also kind of motivate and guide me into this world. And I think he was keen to give me an opportunity and hoped and wished that we could ever be part of this world and industry.
My goodness, you are. And what about heroes? Who are the drivers that you looked up to when you were young?
I always looked up to drivers that were just in front of me. So I often, when I was in karting at the national level, I knew everything about the kind of international scene and the drivers that were 2-3 years ahead of me. And I never had
everything about the way they drove on the track in case you ended up racing them or outside the track as well.
More the racing, but a little bit outside the track as well, because naturally you get to know them outside as well, but more the racing. So I always looked up to drivers that were kind of just ahead of me. Obviously, I looked to Formula One and I appreciated and looked up to everyone on the grid. But if you really talk about a hero, I probably didn't have one, but really kind of respected and followed were the guys that were just ahead of me.
So I need some names.
Names.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
so who was just ahead of you? Who's about 30? Is what I'm.
Well, in karting, that was, when you're younger, I think it's even more kind of the case. So in karting, I had a guy. There was an English guy called Scott Jenkins. He raced Formula Renault 2-liter as well. I think it was for CRS at the time when he moved from karting to cars.
Was he quick in cars?
I mean, I don't think he had a very fair opportunity, and obviously when I came into international karting, I was also doing well, but it was mainly about guys just ahead of me. And especially when I was younger, I was looking up to also a lot of names you won't remember, like people like Marco Ardigo. He was a go-karter who is extremely successful, and he is now actually running the Tony Kart, not junior team, but all the smaller categories. And yeah, I was just living this karting scene. It was my life. I have no education, but that's pretty much been my education.
University of life.
Perhaps you can call it that way, yeah. Of racing, very much so.
The Prime Minister's coming here in 5 minutes. We probably ought to leave before the Prime Minister comes here.
Well, perhaps we get to meet him.
Yeah. Do you still kart now? Do you see it as a way of keeping yourself sharp?
Sadly, I haven't had enough time for it because I've been just very busy. And I will admit, when I was in karting, my last race in karting was the World Championship in Suzuka, World Championship, which we won 11 years ago. So Monza and Suzuka were, again, I kind of sweet memories from the past. But I don't have enough time for it. I always thought I was going to miss it to death, and I do. But at some point, you just, you get into a different kind of life, and different things are occupying you.
Well, you've got certainly plenty to occupy you now. Nyck, it's been a wonderful chat. And from me and everyone listening to this, best of luck with what's coming next year. You deserve it. And I know a lot of people are going to be rooting for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think we better go because the Prime Minister of Japan is about to come into our room. Sorry to keep you waiting, Your Excellency, but I had to keep talking to Nyck, and what a great chat it was. There's a candidness to Nyck De Vries that is going to be very refreshing in Formula One, and given his performance at Monza, I have no doubt that it'll do a great job behind the wheel of the AlphaTauri. There were so many highlights for me in this conversation. I loved Nyck's description of, and I'm quoting him, his older brother Max, giving him some words of encouragement on the grid at Monza, as well as telling him to ring Helmut Marko the day after the race. And the fact that Nyck made the call himself and didn't get someone else to do it was very impressive. Nyck, thanks for your time. Good luck with everything. And I look forward to seeing you at a racetrack again soon. Now, please send in your thoughts and stories about Nyck. Did you see him race in the junior formulas? Were you at Monza when he finished P9 for Williams? Let me know, and I'll read out some of your comments next week. Please send me what you've got at Tom Clarkson F1 on Twitter, or use the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid. Which brings me on to what you sent in about Karun Chandhok after last week's show, and judging by your feedback, he's one of your favourite TV pundits these days. Let's start with this from Raf. Easily one of my favourite episodes of Beyond the Grid, he says. Karun's journey is amazing, and his passion for F1 shows in every word he says in this episode. I think many F1 fans must have felt the same when he described his love for the sport since an early age. I agree with you, Raf. And Karun is so passionate about every aspect of the sport, not only the driving bit. Next, let's hear from Sid. This episode with KC hit home for me as an Indian. I remember his and my dad competing in rallying at the same time. Karun's passion for racing clearly comes through, and I can't wait for them to figure out how to get the Indian Grand Prix back on the calendar. Well, thanks for getting in touch, Sid. Your dad, KC's dad, Vijay Mallya, the racing scene in India 40 years ago was clearly very vibrant. And yes, we'd all like to see the Indian Grand Prix back on the calendar. Come on, let's try and make that happen. And finally, let's hear from Ben Waterworth. An incredible episode of F1 Beyond the Grid this week. Absolutely loved hearing from Karun and his life obsession with Formula One. He definitely is one of us, and a fellow Schumacher fan also makes him even more awesome. Well, thanks, Ben. It's great to hear from you. KC is awesome. We're going to have to leave it there for this week, but thank you to everyone who got in touch. We love hearing from you, and please remember to send in your thoughts and stories about Nyck De Vries. Why not share this episode with a friend or fellow F1 fan who you think might like to hear it? Help us introduce the world to the sport's newest driver. And what are you going to listen to next? How about our interviews with Nyck's future AlphaTauri teammate Yuki Tsunoda, or his fellow F2 champions Charles Leclerc, George Russell and Mick Schumacher? Or what about his new team boss, the tough Franz Tost? There are links to all of them in the description for this episode. Thanks also for leaving us ratings and reviews. We love reading them, and please keep them coming. And thanks for listening. F1 Beyond the Grid is produced by Formula One and Audioboom Studios.